Yes, I'm back in the record room, and today I'm going to show albums that I've listened to 100 times or more. It's going to be fun. I have a bunch of them. We'll get through it. Oh, and what's up with the shirt? It's my latest live show that I saw, Rivers of Nile. My nephew Jared Klein, the drummer. These boys were in Europe. They jumped over to the East Coast. They're based out of Reading, Pennsylvania. And if you didn't guess, they're death metal. Little goth, little bit, but more progressive, black metal, death metal. And Jared's just a great drummer, he really is. My sister, his mother, went to see him at the Berkeley show, so it's just a lot of fun, and they gifted me this t-shirt. I like it a lot. So I'm going to get into these records, and before I do, Vinyl Richie, I was watching him showing albums that he's listened to 100 times. It was great. And also Randall Weaver. He ran a contest for his channel, Randall Weaver, and he was celebrating 400 videos that he had done since he started with YouTubing. So let me get started. I'm going to be all over the musical map here, if you didn't guess, by the t-shirt and the records that I'm going to show. And these are truly records. I just pulled them. It was just easy because there's just so many albums that I've listened to in different formats, cassettes in the car, on CD, and some of these are sealed because I'll pop the CD and I do a lot of driving, and that's where I listen to a lot of my music. So first up, when this album came out, and I love this artist, this is PJ Harvey. This is To Bring You My Love. I love, love, love this album. Absolutely wonderful. And I want to get her John Peel sessions, mixes, but I mean, you got Come On Billy, To Bring You My Love, Down by the Water. When I heard Down by the Water, I mean, I was hooked. Really, this is the first album. I didn't hear her previous album to this first. This is the first album I heard, and I loved it. It was just so big here in the US. 120 minutes in the 90s. And next up, a record that, I mean, Johnny Strikes Up the Band, Rollin' the Headless Thompson Gunner. Yes, that's Warren Zevon. And this is a really nice copy. Look at that hype there. The Bullet, Excitable Boy, Werewolves of London. Great, great, great album. Lawyers, Guns, and Money. The great Warren Zevon. There he is. And just to mention, Steve Harold sent me a record, and very, very nice. And it's, so this morning I was spinning both sides of Descendants, Everything Sucks. And it was really fun. I really enjoyed the very melodic, I mean, they're melodic hardcore. I'm pretty sure they invented it. And, they're Manhattan Beach, Southern California, around 1977, 78. But When I Get Old is a track I really enjoyed on the A side. So Descendants, Everything Sucks was a great listen this morning. And then here's a record. I waited for this record to come out in 1980. I think it was the spring or the month of June. But I waited because their first two records I loved. And guys, that's Women and Children First. That's Van Halen. And I love this record. I've listened to this at least 100 times. I moved into my first apartment ever when I was 23. And I went out and bought this at Warehouse Records, I believe. And I just love it. I like all the David Lee Roth era Van Halen records, but this is a great one. Now here's an artist, and I'm going to bounce around from genres. Here's an artist that when my father and I moved back to Lake Tahoe, North Shore, and I started at Incline High School, 1973, my neighbors down the street had this album, and this is just incredible. It's my favorite album by her, by far, and that's Taken My Time, Bonnie Raitt. She does a Mose Allison cover here. Everybody's Crying Mercy. The opener, You've Been in Love Too Long. I Gave My Love a Candle. Let Me In. Cry Like a Rainstorm. This is just a great, great, great. Chris Smither, I feel the same. The great Chris Smither. Otis Gibbs has been interviewing Chris Smither lately. Just wonderful. Guilty, written by Randy Newman. This is a good, If you don't know this Bonnie Raitt album, I love her early albums. And for this band, I listened to everything, and Waiting for Columbus, of course, is one of the greatest live albums, in my opinion. But I've listened to this album at least 100 times on cassette, CD, and I have it on vinyl, and that's Feet Don't Fail Me Now, Little Feet. And Emmy Lou and Bonnie Raitt sing backup on this record. And, I mean, you got Rock and Roll Doctor, Oh Atlanta, Spanish Moon, and Feet Don't Fail Me Now. And I love the Cold, 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 Triple Face Boogie, the medley. This is just killer. Love Little Feet. Lowell George, Billy Payne, good stuff. And I believe this is the second record, but when this one came out, well, anyhow, that's the Bends. Love this record. Listen to it at least 100 times, absolutely. And yeah, this little band, you know, semi-famous band, this album, listen to this record clearly at least 100 times, probably pushing 200 times, and that's Paranoid. Black Sabbath. It is my favorite Sabbath album. It just is. I mean, the War Pigs is just epic. Into Paranoid, Planet Caravan, wonderful. Into Iron Man, Electric Funeral, we know. Fairies Wear Boots, the last track. Essential album. Now here's an artist, Velvet Underground, but this is where I really got into him first, and that's Lou Reed. And Rock and Roll Animal, I listened to this so many times, and you know, I just picked this up at Recycled Records in Reno. You know, I prefer the other Lou albums as of late, but you know, back in the day when this came out, we just loved this. The Heroine, Sweet Jane, wonderful record. Absolutely. There's a bit of the gatefold. Now, this, yeah, this band is just slightly famous too. But out of all the albums, and I got to tell you, when I heard Black Dog, I rode my 10-speed. It was a Schwinn Varsity green over to my friend's house. He said he had the new Zepp album, right? We go into his garage, converted garage, you know, blacklight posters, all that. And he dropped the needle on Black Dog, and all of us just looked at each other. We couldn't believe it. But Houses of the Holy is the one that I've listened to the very most. Absolutely. Love this album. Over the Hills and Far Away. You know, of course, we all, you know, played it on guitar. And love this album. Just wonderful album. And here's a little band. You know, Eric Burdon got the ball rolling, and I love the early War. But The World is a Ghetto, I've listened to this one at least 100 times. I had the cassette, I had the CD, and I finally picked up this album at Bill's Garage. I had it on the other formats. But, you know, I mean, you got the Cisco Kid, man. The World is a Ghetto. City Country City. It's just so good. And, you know, a lot of times I prefer to play War's greatest hits. And the early War records are my very favorite. Now here's an Irish guy. I mean, Phil Lynott, right, man? Jailbreak, Thin Lizzy. When I heard Cowboy Song, really, you know, I got into him late. When I heard Cowboy Song, it just sealed the deal for me. I just loved it. Living here in Nevada, and the whole, you know, the whole imagery of the West and the cowboy and everything was just so cool. And I love this album. You know, a track that I just really dig on here is Fight or Fall. I just love that track. And here, I mean, you got Scott Gorham. You got Robbo here, man. You got Phil Lynott. Oh, man, look at this. Now, here is a band with Steve Marriott. And this is the record that I just absolutely love. And I've listened to this so many times. And I found this one in the shrink, and it was just so cool. I mean, you got Hot and Nasty, you got The Fixer, you got the Eddie Cochran cover, Come On Everybody, and you got 30 Days in the Hole. Humble Pie Smokin'. So killer, absolutely, and no filler. Yeah. and it's from an old hometown store called Mirabelli's. It was in the first mall ever in Reno was the Park Lane Mall. Now here's an artist, and I am bouncing around with genres. I wanted to mention, as far as country rock goes, Bob Dylan's Nashville Skyline is what really got the ball rolling for me. And then, back then we didn't call it Americana. We just called it country rock or country blues or whatever. And this Taj Mahal album is so, so good. You got Mississippi John Hurt on the cover of this album, and he's got the Pointer Sisters on this singing backup. And this is just a wonderful album. And they do Sweet Home Chicago on this album. Just love it. Just great. And there's the Pointer Sisters on the back. They don't, nobody talks about them too much. From Oakland, California, from the East Bay of San Francisco. Now here's an album, and I've heard a couple of other people mention this artist. He was in the Charlatans, and they came out. They were Family Dog. They were in Virginia City back in 1967, 6, 7, and that's Dan Hicks and his Hot Licks, and this is Where's the Money on Blue Thumb. And I have listened to this album so many times. My friends and I, we love this. Such humor, and you have the R. Crumb illustrations on the back. And if you don't know this, if you know Dan Hicks, cool. But if you don't know this album, it's worth a listen. It's just a complete record. I feel like singing by hook or by crook, coast to coast, reeling down. News from up the street. Where's the money? Shorty falls in love. And, you have a real old-timey Django Reinhardt, Stephen Grappelli feel to it. Wonderful. And Dan Hicks and his Lickettes. This is a good one. And this, this folds out. This is a really cool design on this record. So wanted to show that one. Now, with this little band, in 1970, Rod McKernan was belting out Turn On Your Love Light on the Big Ball comp, on the Warner Brothers comps. And that's on this album here, Live Dead. This is just a killer Grateful Dead album. Absolutely. And we have just an epic Dark Star, Into St. Stephen, the 11, Into Love Light. So Death Don't Have No Mercy. Great Grateful Dead album. And yes, I enjoy the Grateful Dead. Now, this is back in the days, probably my favorite band, I'd say, in the 70s. And the Yes album, was really, even Fragile, a close second, but I love this album. And I love Steve Howe as a guitarist on it, and I love his old-timey ragtime guitar playing. I love all those Steve Howe solos. Beautiful record. And when I moved to the Virgin Islands, I brought this cassette, and I listened to this so much. And this is the Pete Townsend album. I just call it Chinese Eyes. And you have The Sea Refuses No River, North Country Girl I Love, Stop Hurting People, Somebody Save Me, Face Dances Part 2, Slit Skirts, great Pete album. The Genius of Mr. Townsend. And I had to represent with some Rolling Stones. And Get Your Ya-Ya's Out is the one that I've listened to the most. Absolutely. I mean, the Jumpin' Jack Flash, Little Queenie, Street Fightin' Man, and the Midnight Rambler, right? Bam! So good. And out of all the albums of this artist, this is the one. Overnight Sensation, Frank Zappa, so great. Dynamo Hum, it's all on here. We got Camarillo Brillo, I'm the Slime that oozes out of your television, Dirty Love, 50-50, Zombie Wolf, Montana. And I've seen Frank twice, and just it's so memorable, him soloing on Montana. What a great guitarist. Just does it with his eyes closed, so nonchalant. And for, the Jamaican Beatles, right? That's what I call King Bob. Exodus is the one that I've listened to the most. Love this album. And I had to show this. And then, you know, late 80s roll around, early 90s, and I heard this record. I was blown away. Now, this is the Brendan O'Brien remix. This is the original recording and then remixes by Brendan O'Brien. This is, I picked this up. This one's still sealed because I have another copy. This is 10, Pearl Jam. Love this album. Black was my first Pearl Jam tune that I just fell in love with. Well, the whole record. And the second, well, and the third record too. So Pearl Jam. And then in the band I was in, we were 90s alternative original rock with a vintage sound as well to it because of me. But we used to listen to this album incessantly, and that's Dirt, Alice in Chains. And Down in a Hole, Angry Chair, Dirt, Rooster, so cool. And a little band out of Boston, out of Massachusetts, and that would be the Pixies and Doolittle. Yeah, I've spun this, well, not on vinyl, but in the car and on cassette. Listened to Doolittle at least 100 times. Love, 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 love this album. And here's an artist that, you know, forever gonna enjoy and love. And he released 2 albums in 1975, and this is one of them, Tonight's the Night. And crazily, my favorite track on here is Albuquerque. Roll Another Number is just so good. Borrowed Tune, New Mama, yeah. Bruce Berry, Danny Whitten, you know, I mean, Neil was bummed with the passing of 2 of his dear friends. And a band that opened for Neil, I don't know which tour that was, a long time ago, and I just love this album. This is Sonic Youth, and this is Dirty. And Creme Brulee on here is about my favorite tune. And 100% Swimsuit Issue, love it. Check it out. There's the songs on the back. And we're going to just end with this little record that my grand trilogy really is The Man Who Sold the World, Hunky Dory. And this is my sealed copy. And I want to say that I just recently got a UK pressing on the Orange RCA of David Bowie, The Rise and Fall of Ziggy Stardust and Spiders from Mars. And I saw him in November of '72 in Phoenix, Arizona's Celebrity Theater. Hey, thanks for checking this out. There's a lot of records that I've listened to at least 100 times, and I'll see you next week. I've been back to Bill's Garage. Amazingly, there's plenty of nice records to show you. Thanks for watching.